So, Danganronpa 2 by 2 was recently announced, and I've seen a lot of speculation online about things, but one thing I haven't seen a lot of people discuss in much detail is the roles that are going to change. Because we know we've been tricked before, we can be tricked again. Just because in the trailer it shows us playing as Hajime does not mean that we're actually going to be playing as Hajime. He could be the first person to die, for all we know. But first, let's discuss the canonicity of the game. It's been mentioned that the game will be derived from canon. It could be not canon, it could be in its own universe. It could be that we're being lied to. We can't trust anything that is said at this stage of production. V3 was a commentary on franchises that just keep putting out works over and over again that's pretty much very similar to the works before, but with little tweaks, which, you know, the Danganronpa games definitely started to feel like that, and that's exactly what the point V3 was trying to make at the end when they ended it all. So, potentially, this remake of Danganronpa 2 could be a commentary on remakes, like how remakes of games are actually just slight increases to the graphics, make things look a little better, run a little smoother, and then Nintendo will charge you 70 quid for it. Like, did you see The Last of Us Part 2 remastered? That came out like 4 years earlier. It was a visually incredible game. There was really no need to make a remake. That was a very obvious cash grab, but that does seem to be the way that those games are going, what with the shows and all. So, I think I can't remember the video, but someone said that Danganronpa 2 times 2 could potentially just be in itself a cash grab, which would sort of reinforce V3's message. But obviously, we know that there's going to be some big twist which causes an alternate timeline of events and different victims, different murderers. So it being a cash grab seems a stretch, maybe. I think it's more like, again, could be the commentary on remakes, remastered games, but also it's just something that the fans want. The creator of the game discussed why he chose to do it for the second game and not Trigger Happy Havoc. And it was because too much happens in the first game, it's too relevant to plot, whereas the second one's in a simulation, it doesn't really matter. But him saying that sort of implies that it's going to be canon, because if the first game was canon, it would change everything, it would change the meaning. If the remastered version of the second game is canon, then it doesn't affect too much. So there's no reason why, because if it was never going to be canon, there would be no reason why he couldn't remaster Trigger Happy Havoc. But also, Danganronpa 2 is the most popular game. Like, that's just a given. It's very, very obvious on Fandom Spaces which game is the most popular. So bringing back probably the most popular cast of characters, the most popular game, would make sense. Not because of a cash grab, but because it's what the fans want. And I agree with that. I'm very glad that it's the second game that's being remastered and not the first or the third game. For this game, people have been saying the same thing they've been saying for years. If Hajime wasn't the protagonist, then it would be Mahiru, because she's the most normal, which, first of all, rude. Second of all, in the remastered game, since we've already had a quote-unquote normal protagonist, having another one seems a bit counterintuitive. I mean, we already know about the game, we already know everything about Hope's Peak, about the Ultimates. There seems to be no reason why we should have a character who doesn't know much, which is understandable. By another theory that's cropping up is that if it wasn't Hajime as the protagonist, it would be Nagito. Or a more popular theory that I've seen is Hajime is going to die and Nagito is going to take over. Like I said earlier, Hajime might not even be the protagonist to start with. just because they've been advertising it like that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. But I am hesitant to jump to the conclusion that it will be Nagito, because yes, we've already played as him a little bit in the original game, so that sort of gives us a teaser of what's to come, but it also feels too obvious. Now, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. He's a very solid character to be the protagonist. I don't disagree with that, but I think he's more likely to be the protagonist than Mahiru. I definitely don't think it's going to be Mahiru. I think it could also be Chiaki, and I feel like people aren't bringing up that point. Now, I'm mostly saying it must be Chiaki or Nagito because of the sort of original formula that the game follows, where you've got your protagonist, you've got your antagonist, and you've got their like sidekick. In this game, it can completely defy the Danganronpa formula, and they might not play those roles. Now, no matter who the protagonist was other than Nagito would be the antagonist because everyone hates him, but Chiaki might not be the sidekick helper anymore. Obviously, if Hajime isn't the protagonist, then Hajime himself could be the sidekick. If Nagito was the protagonist, then I suppose anyone really could be the antagonist. It would probably, if Nagito was the protagonist, it probably would more likely be Chiaki, who is the antagonist to him rather than Hajime, or potentially Imposter. I think if Imposter lives past chapter 1, which he is very likely to do, I think he's a very good candidate for someone who would play the sidekick role. We just never got to see that side of him because he died before he could do a trial, and he seemed to be getting on well with Hajime even before Chiaki did. Obviously, they're still going to retain their personalities. That's something that can't change. So, Chiaki's still going to be very smart. She's still going to be very helpful in the trials. Nagito is still going to be cryptic and insane, but he's also still going to be very smart and useful for the trials. If Chiaki were to be the protagonist, it could potentially hide the part of her that is the traitor. But again, we've played these games before. We know that she's the traitor. And let's say if it is not canon, then she doesn't have to be the traitor. I mean, there could be no traitor, but it could be someone else. So we could play as her. Chiaki being the traitor or not doesn't really detract or give probability of her being the protagonist. I don't think it makes much of a difference. Obviously, if she is the traitor, that would be pretty interesting for a protagonist. We've never had that before. However, if she wasn't, then it could be that they lead us to believe, to start with, that she is the traitor like usual, and then completely flip it on its head and we've no idea who it is and we've got to figure it out. If Chiaki wasn't the traitor, the best character to fill that role would most likely be Imposter, because like I said about him potentially being the sidekick, him and Chiaki seem like they could fill similar roles and just swap around. So him being the traitor and just trying to help them, I would believe that, and that would make sense. It could potentially be Hajime himself. It could be the person that we play as, whoever we play as, but it hides the fact from us at the beginning. Or maybe potentially even the character themselves doesn't know that they're an AI to begin with. They just have to learn that. I definitely do not think it would be Nagito. It would never be Nagito. Potentially, because we know that the traitor is good, they could flip it on its head, surprise us, and make it out that the traitor is actually working for Monokuma. Obviously, the Junko AI infected the simulation, which is why she appeared and the killing game started. But if that infected the traitor's AI, then potentially they could be evil and trying to set up terrible things to happen, or they could be one of the Blackens. Because we know the victims and the Blackens are going to be different, which means just because there is an alternate timeline of events doesn't mean that there's not going to be any motives. Monokuma will definitely still be giving the motives, they'll just be different from the last ones. But because of that, it's difficult to tell who will be the victims and the blackens and the survivors based on just their personalities, because as we've seen from the motives last time, they will definitely be targeted to specific people, which is a bit annoying. I've seen some speculation about the big event that causes the alternate timeline to be something to do with them being the remnants of despair, which would make a wildly different game, but I don't think this is going to be the case. But I potentially think they might reuse the despair disease at some point for something. It might not be like last time where it causes there to be a murder, but I think it could be a plot point, because there's no reason why they wouldn't, even if it is non-canon, there's no reason why they wouldn't still be remnants of despair. Knowing but not being the remnants of despair is a possibility. Maybe not from the very get-go, but early on, and that being revealed causes a murder. Yes, I would believe that, but I don't believe that will be what causes the alternate timeline. People are saying that being revealed is what causes the timeline to be alternate, but I don't think that's what's going to happen, because if the motives are specific, it'll still be targeted and it'll still be specific people, and I also don't think them knowing that they're remnants will change that much about the dynamic. I also don't think that the chapters will follow the same formula, as in like the third chapter is where 2 people get killed, or the second chapter is where like a serial killer is revealed. Potentially it could just be one person dies per chapter and we actually get an extra survivor. It could potentially be that there are multiple chapters where 2 people are killed and we have less survivors. We could potentially have our first triple murder. Obviously that sort of defeats the point, but still, we could potentially have another murder where there is an accomplice, but obviously they wouldn't get killed. It would just cause some ruffles in the group dynamic. Now on to the juiciest part. Who I think will live, will die, will tell your story. So a lot of people are saying that they think Kazuichi's done for. He's not going to survive a second game. I disagree. Out of all the survivors, I think he is the most likely to still survive. He is unkillable. There's no way my boy Kazuichi is dying. No way. However, I do subscribe to the theory that because Hiyoko already had a whole character development set out for her, that she was going to be a survivor, that she will be a survivor now. I do believe that. And we will finally get to see her grow as a character, which means I do believe that Fuyuhiko is definitely going to sort of replace her and die. I think he will be a victim. Some people are worried that Teru is going to be a survivor. I disagree. I think he's going to get quite far and he's going to have some development. I think it might be like chapter 3 or beyond that he dies, and he's going to have some development and we're actually going to feel bad when he dies. This is more I hope than I think, but I think Mikan will once again be a murderer, just because she was done so dirty with chapter 3. That trial should have been better, that execution should have been better, and this is a chance for her to get what she deserves. If she isn't a murderer, she's definitely going to be a victim, though she's not surviving. Imposter could potentially survive, like I said, if he plays that kind of sidekick role. I know playing that role doesn't necessarily mean you're bound for survival, but still, he could sort of be like Maki in V3. They could be lazy and potentially flip Gundam and Nekomaru, just with Gundam being the victim and Nekomaru being the murderer. I hope they don't do that, but I just feel like there's a good chance that they might. Because people like Peko and Imposter, who are maybe not Nagito smart, but are still quite smart characters, are going to be sort of living a little bit longer. I think that Mikan might die early on. She could potentially be the first blackened because she's too useful, because she has helped them out a bit with sort of being able to analyse the body, and without her, I feel like it would be too easy if they had both Peko, the Imposter, and Mikan. I think both characters who died in chapter 3 will survive, so I think Ibuki will also survive. I think she'll sort of take on the role of like village idiot that Akane plays, so I think Akane will die. I'm just not sure how. I think she will be a victim, but you know, she's a very angry woman. Potentially she could do something in anger, which I've always thought, they always plan out their murders, and so the characters just have to figure out what the plan is. But if they didn't have no plan, if they just did something in anger, then I feel like they're more likely to get away with it. Like in Trigger Happy Havoc, I always thought Mondo would actually have gotten away with it if Byakuya hadn't seen him and intercepted, because the only thing they figured out was Byakuya's plan, and if no one had seen Mondo do it, it would have been a perfect crime, really. So I think if Akane did hurt somebody in anger, obviously she'd be very upset about it, and she might be a bit too stupid to sort of defend herself, but Mondo's not exactly smart either. I think it will be difficult to figure out as long as she did defend herself and she, maybe kept quiet. I think Sony's gonna kill someone. I think she knows too much about murder. I think she's gonna do it. I think she is gonna be someone who is a blackened. And I might be partly saying this because I really want to see a kind of royal execution. I think that'll be a really fun punishment. Now, I believe that Mahiru must die in order for Hiyoko's character to develop. However, if that wasn't the case, then I would be unsure about her. But because that is the case, I'm sure she's going to die. I'm really not sure how. I'm quite unsure about Mahiru, I'll be honest. Maybe I agree, she is the most normal one. It doesn't give much away. It seems like the only way she would be involved is if there was another really specific motive. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I've made this clear, but I'm pretty certain that Hajime is going to die. If he doesn't die, then he's gonna become Izuru Kamakura early on. And Izuru Kamakura is just going to be there for the rest of the game, or a while at least. I'm still not sure about Nagito. I've seen a lot of people that are certain that he's going to make it to the end and be a survivor, but I can't be sure because he's still going to be an antagonist. You can't take that away. Unless there's going to be some character development, which potentially there might be, but unless there is character development, then he's just going to be an antagonist right until the very end. He's going to be siding with Junko at the end. Another thing I've seen people say is that Makoto, Kyoko and Byakuya are going to be in the killing game now. That the thing that changes the timeline is that boat, which we see in that one clip, which is going to be the Future Foundation coming earlier on. I don't believe this. I think the more likely theory is that they're not going to be in the game at all. I think potentially if that boat is there, we might find their dead bodies and we might have to figure out why they're dead, but I don't think they're going to be part of the killing game. I think that Chiaki is more likely to survive than Nagito. If, like I said, it's a commentary on remaking games, Chiaki is the ultimate gamer. Who better to make that commentary than her? I feel like she could fill a very Makoto-like role, sort of at the end, against, I don't know, big bad corporations maybe. I mean, even if she is the traitor, she could still do that. The only thing I have left to say is I think that one Nagito edit is gonna become that one Nagito edit too. That concludes everything I have to discuss about Danganronpa 2x2, but by all means, let's keep this discussion going in the comments.